Welcome to the Ocean Studio of the Iowa Vlog. We just had a Wookiee for the first time here in the Ocean Studios now is actually able to see the show as it is being live streamed, and he was very interested in the birds that were flying, which is why he has decided he would take his stand. You can go ahead and sit down there, Wookiee. All co-hosts sit for the show. We'll see if Wookiee will comply. So here we are. We're continuing our series on the Messiah. Good boy, Wookiee. Our episode that is derived from volume 2 of Coming Home. As you know, there are currently 2 or 3 volumes of Coming Home, and I'm working on volumes 4 and 5 simultaneously. I've written most of it, but I'm going back through and editing it all based upon all we have learned in the last 2 or 3 months that is just profoundly important insights regarding our times and our role at this time. Here I am. I'm working on this, tracing the greater and lesser luminaries all the way through Yahweh's presentation of them from the first prophecy all the way to the last. And I've already written considerable on this, and I'm dealing with the Exodus from Eden and about Adam and Chawah having the 2 boys, and the horrible consequence of that. And wouldn't you know, you've got a whole prophecy even there regarding the blood of the Adamah Parah and what the consequence is of working against and struggling against the Adamah over time. So it's really an interesting study, and there is just so much to learn. And every time we do something new, it just turns out to be such a great learning experience. I'm laughing here because Wookiee, as I have shared with you previously, does like to be a keyboard jihadist. He will add considerable to any book that I'm writing as he walks across the keyboard. But we have attempted to thwart him by putting. We have covers for a bunch of things here, and we put covers over the keyboards to the 2 laptops that are in front of me here. So we're hoping that we have thwarted the keyboard jihad here for this program. All right, so we're going to return to where we were in our last program on Mashiach. It's important for people to know that there really is only one Mashiach of consequence. There's only one person that Yahweh says he is my Messiah. Is one person that Yahweh says he is your Messiah. There's only one Messiah that Yahweh says is going to return. And for crying out loud, it ain't Jesus. I mean, Jesus is a complete fraud. He never existed. He's nothing but a crude counterfeit of David. And the Messiah happens to be the same person that God said 3 times, he is my son and I'm his father. And I know in Judaism, the rabbis hate Yahweh, and so they will do everything they can to renounce and denounce him, including erasing his name. And they've claimed that Yahweh is incapable of having a son. So when Yahweh said that Dod is my son and I am his father, that from their point of view, God was lying. Makes Judaism a pretty much of a hypocritical religion then, doesn't it? But the one person that God said, he is also the returning king. He's going to come back as Elion, as the very influence of God in our presence, that his throne and seat of honor and kingdom will endure forever and all places for all time. These are all statements that were made of Dod. In fact, in the 89th Mizmor and elsewhere, Yahweh said that he established the covenant through Dod, which means that Dod fulfilled the spring Mikre, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim because they deliver the benefits of the covenant, eternal life, a removal of our guilt, and also our adoption into the covenant family, along with our enrichment and our empowerment. So when we speak about the Messiah, we're speaking of Dod. Unfortunately, Israel has been without guidance for a very long time. And this has been a considerable concern because they do not know that Well, Dode has been here 5 times already, and that he is returning a sixth. And it should not be complicated for people to recognize that God is capable of taking a soul and inserting that soul into a different person along the ordinary flow of time. He can't take somebody back in time, but he can take the same soul that was conceived long ago and reinsert that soul to accomplish what he wants done. And in the case of Adam, the first human conceived in God's image with a neshama conscience in addition to a nephesh soul, he is God's firstborn, and that is why Dode is called God's firstborn. And that is why God says of Dode, the moment we're introduced to him, that he is Adam. And so the first appearance of Dode is as Adam. His second was as Shem, as Noach's son. His third is when he is introduced as Eldod during the Exodus upon Moshe's meltdown, when Moshe needed support. Dode's soul was reinserted into Eldod, which would be God's beloved. He, as you know, had horrible parents in his fourth appearance, but his fourth appearance was as the shepherd boy who was anointed by Yahweh as the Mashiach, and the Spirit came upon him at 8 years old, and he would become the king of Israel and write many of the Mizmor Psalms. He is the one who explained as a prophet that he would fulfill Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, telling us that he would do so in 33 CE, and that he would fulfill Pesach through crucifixion. Saying so, 1,000 years before he endured it, 700 years before Roman-style crucifixion exists, 600 years before Rome even existed. One of the most amazing prophecies of all time, including the one that Dode delivers as Gabriel through Nathan, through Daniel, to tell us the exact day that he would fulfill Chag Matzah in year 4000 Yah, which is 33 CE. So that was Dode's fourth life. The fifth time that Yahweh would deploy his soul he was born to Ruth and Boaz. They were symbolic of delivering the kinsman redeemer, and they would deliver Emmanuel, God with us, in advance of his fulfillment of Pesach Matzah Bikurim in 33 CE, likely conceived and born in 2 BCE on our calendar, likely on Sukkah. And so that was the fifth iteration of Dode. And the sixth and final will be when he returns as King of the Universe on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah 2033. I know a fair amount about this, not only because I've studied the prophets for 25 years, devoting every waking hour to an amplified translation from the oldest extant sources, typically from the Dead Sea Scrolls, of what has been revealed, but also because I was there. I am one of those souls that God has deployed many times, and by the time it's all done, I will have been deployed by God on 8 occasions. And by having 2 more occasions than Dode, doesn't make me greater than Dode by any stretch of the imagination. He is introduced as the Gadol Mayor, makes him the oldest and greatest of all. And in that same context, I'm introduced as the lesser, which would be the younger, but also less influential Mayor, because Dode's influence is on the entire covenant family, on the entire human experience. He's the most important man in God's story. And 100% of the time I'm deployed, without exception, it is to advance the cause of our returning king of Dode. I serve as support. typically as a father figure, but also a brother, a colleague, sometimes a conscience. I'm there for Dowd. And so God picked Dowd when he conceived him as Adam. It's been his favorite person ever since, and nothing has changed, nothing will change. And when I came along as Chinook, I befriended Adam as Dowd, and made a tremendous difference in the last 300 years of his life, and served as his father. When he was born as Shem, I was Noach. Been doing this for a very long time. God and I have a 5,400-year relationship, and for those that are uncomfortable hearing that, and hearing that we had an arrangement where my wife, way back in the days that I was Chinook 5,400 years ago, is the same woman that I'm married to today. We have been best friends and colleagues, and have served our beloved Son, our King, our Messiah, our Savior, ever since. So it is it's a long story, and again, my job is to tell you what I learn, how I have been able to do it, how it plays out in your life, why it's important to you, and what it means for you. And in this case, what it means for you is to pay attention to Dowd, appreciate what he has done. He fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. He told you all about it. And unless you capitalize on what he has done in collaboration with Yahweh, there is no salvation. All of our opportunity for us to know Yahweh and engage in a relationship with him is possible because of what Dowd has done. And my role is to make certain that you are aware of it. You're aware that Jesus is a crude counterfeit of him, and most of the things said about Jesus are identity theft and replacement theology, stolen from Dowd. So now, as we move forward and we look forward to the sixth and final life of Dowd, which will be eternal, we find that it concludes with his, or begins, I should say, with his return and restoration of Yisrael on Yom Kippurim in 2033, October 2nd of 2033. If you go to the yadayah.com website, you will find a ticker, a countdown clock that tells you exactly how many days exist between now and the time that the Messiah, Savior, King, Dowd, as Elyon, as the influence of God, returns with Yahweh on Yom Kippurim. We'll tell you exactly how many days that is. We'll also tell you when the time of Israel's troubles ends, and when the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah commences. We will tell you when the Shabua harvest will take place, right to the day, the hour, the minute, as well as the beginning of Israel's troubles, which is this Shabua, May 22nd of 2026. So this text reads, therefore, the children of Yisrael will return, and they're going to be restored. The return of the children of Yisrael commences at the end of the time of Israel's troubles. That time is 7 years. It begins on the 22nd of May of this year. It ends 7 years thereafter, which will be on Teruah, the 23rd and 24th of September in 2033. That is when God is facilitating the return of Yisrael, and that return of Yisrael is facilitated for miraculously, because God is bringing the mortal remnant of Yisrael from around the world, the night of Teruah, into Jerusalem to surround the Temple Mount, which, by the way, will no longer have the Dome of the Rock or Alaska Mosque, and it will have a replica of the tent of the Restoring Witness on it. And there will actually be a return of the original Ark of the Covenant with its mercy seat. It will be there. And the 10 instructions that were written on the 2 tablets of stone will be there. There'll be an original autograph of the Torah on display there. And also there will be the altar and I don't know if it'll be a replica or the original one that Solomon had commissioned long ago. But there will be an altar, and that's where the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah will take place on this day, which facilitates the return of Yisrael. So therefore, the children of Yisrael, the sons who engage and endure with God, will return, and they will be restored. Shub. It's what God's been looking for a long time. It is the message throughout the prophets is shub for shub. You return to God, he will return to you. And of course, what this states emphatically is that there's no basis for Christianity or Islam, both of which claim the Torah and the prophets as theirs, which is ludicrous because they never cite them accurately once, and their scriptures are counter to what's presented in the Torah and prophets. But this is not a return of a church. This is not a return of Arabs or Muslims or Christians. It's Israel that will return. And that theme, that realization is presented in 100 places throughout the Torah and prophets. A beautiful scene that you see behind me. I can see now for the first time while I'm doing this program, the camera work that Rich is able to coordinate as we produce this show together. And it is just such a glorious position that we're in. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. I watch a lot of YouTube videos because I want to have expertise and be able to talk intelligently to you about the intersection between prophecy and the news. And there is no one broadcasting from a location like this. This is not a forced backdrop. We are right here. This is, here I'm reaching behind here. That is the rail of a balcony. The glass that sits between me and a 20-foot fall. But what you're looking at is the view over my shoulder. We can zoom in, we can zoom out of that view. That is a Green Key Peninsula there. The island that sits off to the left of it is a U.S. national park, as we are in the U.S. National. We are part of the United States, the territory of the United States. That's Buck Island. And the marina that you can see some of those masts in, Green Key Marina. It's where when I first came to this island, St. Croix, Cara was the name of our yacht. Nice yacht. We lived on it for 2 years. A year coming here through all the Caribbean islands, and a year once we were here. We chose this home because it looks right down over Cara and the marina. So this is the perch that we're broadcasting from, and we want to share it with you. The Nakri, the observant foreigner, and the Choder, this stem off the main branch, he is the man from the sea, speaking to the land. Oh, you can see now from the opposite side here. This is our studio. I can wave to you, look around, and say hello there, camera. In fact, behind that camera is just nothing but ocean and sky, and you can see Wookie here looking under the arm of our introvert man. It's pushing people away, is why we have introvert man here. But this is our home. This is our perch in front of the sea. So continuing with the text, it reads, "Then they will seek to be with Yahweh." So they're going to return. Yisrael is going to return, and they're going to seek to be with Yahweh, their God. Now that is something that we have made possible because I've written these books that you can see behind me here, over my left shoulder, under the Yada Yawa series. 35 of them, be 40, I think, by the time we're done. Uh, and they direct Israel back to Yahweh. They reintroduce the world to Yahweh's name. So, seeking to be with Yahweh and returning to Yahweh, the very concept that you have to return because you've distanced yourself from him. Israel has estranged themselves from Yahweh for the past 3,400 years. These are concepts that were first introduced in the series of books that sit behind me, the Yada Yawa series. And it's important for you to know that. And Yahweh's name was introduced there for the first time in 2,500 years, along with proof as to how it is properly pronounced. But this doesn't just end with Yahweh's name. It ends by telling you that, and affirming here, that my role is not just to reintroduce Yahweh's name. It's not just to cause Israel to come back home, to return. It is also to restore Dod's name and reputation as the king, not only of the past of Israel, but also of the future and the Savior. So this says, then they will seek to be with Yahweh, their God, and with Dod, their king. I just want to pause. I want that to sink in. Yahweh is God's one and only name. If you're going to return, you have to return to Yahweh. Not Hashem, not Jesus Christ, not Allah, not Shiva. Yahweh. Full stop. If you want to return to God, it has to be to Yahweh. And if you want to return to God in a manner whereby your soul is restored, whereby you are part of the covenant family and can live forevermore in his presence, then you have to long also, desire also, to be with Dod as your king. If Dod is not your king, if you don't even know who Dod is, if you think that David is his right name and Jehovah is God's name, then you're too lost to benefit from this message. Yahweh is God, period. Dod is king. End of conversation. I have no respect for any human governance. How would you today with Satan incarnate being the POTUS of the United States? But the fact is that I have never respected human authority. But I'll tell you what, I make an exception with Dod. Dod is sovereign of the world. If you're uncomfortable with that, if you want to assign that to somebody else, then go away. You are not going to be welcome in God's presence. So, in this same text, we learned just and had it affirmed to us yesterday and the day before that the governing and educational document of hereafter is Yada Yahweh. God's all in. He's saying that in the end, man's not going to teach mankind anymore. Instead, it's going to be through Yada Yahweh, which is the name of these books that I have written on your behalf. And here we're told that the children of Israel are going to return and they're going to be restored. It is the children of Israel, the descendants. There we go. It's presented right there. There's three of many, many, many of them. A beautiful animation. Thank you very much. So because of Yada Yahweh and this Yahweh vlog, there will be Israelites who are going to shub, are going to return. It is assured. It will happen. And it's going to happen in considerable numbers on the 23rd and 24th of September of 2033, year 6000 Yah, which is Teruah. And when that occurs, the motivation is that they will seek to be with Yahweh, their God, and with Dod, their king. And they will revere, they will show profound respect for the awe-inspiring nature of Yahweh, for his good nature and abundant generosity, for his attractive and beneficial qualities, for being fair, moral, joyous, and pleasing. Because this is going to occur in the last days. Ba Akarat Ha Yomem. Hosha. He liberates and saves. Hosea 3:5. Stunning, isn't it? That is our story. Job complete, mission complete. And there's not only this recognition here that the prophet Hosea would say that when Israel finally returns, and now we know it's in the last days, which is what I've told you, that we're dealing with Teruah in 2033, that not only is that going to occur, and it's going to be Israel that returns, not only do we know that Israel is going to return to Yahweh, and that they're going to show profound respect for Yahweh, which heretofore hasn't been possible, not for a single moment in the last 2,500 years until I began to write the Yada Yahweh series, the library, yadayah.com, if you want to read them. But we know that Yahweh is returning with Dod, who is sovereign king. There's also another aspect of this which is important to me. I hope it resonates with you. Yes, Yahweh is God, and God's a big deal. If you're going to have a title, I would say that's probably the top title in the universe is God. It means you were the creator of this six-dimensional universe that we can perceive aspects of that stretches out over 96 billion light years, contains at least 2 trillion galaxies, some of them with as many as 1 trillion stars in a galaxy, and conceived life here on this planet, authored the Torah. It's a pretty impressive resume, actually. But I'm here to tell you, Yahweh is approachable. He's kind, generous. He's not like any of the religious gods that men have made. He's not egotistical, doesn't want to be feared, doesn't even want anyone to bow down to him, doesn't ask anyone to pray to him, most certainly does not want to be worshipped. He wants to be known. Sure, he'd like to be appreciated. But the fact is that God's just fun to be around. He's interesting. He's educational. He's caring. One of the most wonderful of all attributes is that he's trustworthy. He's reliable. Now, things that God is not, he's not omnipresent. In fact, in this universe that we're in right now, he's not present at all. So not only isn't he omnipresent, he's not present. You say, wait a minute, how's that? Well, wait a minute. All religions have God as omnipresent. Well, if he was omnipresent, then that might as well be God right there. Dog is God backwards. That might be God there too. No. Omnipresent would mean God is in everything, and therefore he would be the antithesis of how he presents himself. He presents himself as set apart. And if God was in everything and part of everything, then he would be essentially rendered nothing more than the universe itself. And therefore, he is not a living being, but a just massive combination of particles. He is the universe he created. That would be absurd. God is not omnipresent. He's not even present. What God mean by that is God said that he was going to spend the time between the moment that Israel rejected him, his people rejected him, and told him to go away and shut up. They didn't want to see him or hear from him again, which was 3,450 years ago. And the time they return, he's spending that in the seventh dimension. And as a seven-dimensional being, he can't enter our three-dimensional realm. All he can do is to interact with us is through his words, which we're sharing here, and spoken through his prophets. He can manifest an aspect of his nature through fire and light to show that this is representative of who he is. He can be a booming voice, but he was told the last time he tried that and never do it again, and he agreed that he wouldn't. He can convey his intent through implements like the Malach, the spiritual and heavenly implements. He has a soul that he can use as an avatar to place into a physical being to convey an aspect of his nature and enjoy a meal with us, that sort of thing. But what you're witnessing in his soul being projected through a physical being is not even 1 billionth of a trillionth of God. There's an infinite increase in size, mass, energy, capability, wherewithal each time you go up in dimensions, and he's past our third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. The other thing is God's not omniscient. He doesn't know all, doesn't want to know all. And it's obvious. There's times where he says, I know this, I've heard it. And he says, you'll ask questions. Where are you? And he doesn't want to know everything. If he knew everything, there wouldn't be any purpose to life. There'd be no purpose to a relationship. There'd be no purpose to any of this if he knew how it was all going to end. Now, on the big picture, he has put a plan in place, and he has, because he is equivalent to light, and on a photon of light, as light, you can witness the future, even in the past, and report back what you've seen. And so he has told us how it's all going to turn out. He does it for two reasons. One is when what he says is going to happen occurs as he said it would, we know we can trust what he has revealed. And also when he reports things in the past, like 14 billion years ago with creation, and he lays it out as it occurred 14 billion years ago in the proper time frame, because a being at creation as the creator would experience the 14 billion years that we have. We can't witness all of that from the earth, because the earth's only been here for 4.5 billion years. So earth time is only 4.5 billion of the 14 billion years. But we know how time flowed at creation because we have the cosmic microwave background radiation, and it was stretched by 10 to the 12th power. If you divide 14 billion years by 10 to the 12th, you're at 6 24-hour days. Everything that God said is accurate, which means that we can trust him when he tells us what's going to happen in the future and how he's offering an opportunity for us to be part of his family. But God created a mechanism where he specifically would not know. Because Dode, our king, on Matzah in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE, carried our guilt, past, present, and future, away and deposited it in Sheol, which is the equivalent of a black hole, never to be seen again. So God can't see anything that I've ever done wrong or will do wrong. God can't even see it. It's not there anymore. It's the beauty of his plan of reconciliation and how he went about doing it through his beloved son, Dowd, which is why we should respect him for going into Sheol to carry away our guilt. But yeah, there's lots of things. And God's not tormented with the everyday machinations of humankind. It would be just so utterly disappointing for him. What God found out very early on, the reason he regretted creating man wasn't because of what happened in the garden. In fact, he didn't give up on Adam at all. He did give up on Chava, but he did not give up on Adam. The experience outside of the garden was God didn't want to have a failure to launch. He wanted to give that soul, which became Dowd, every opportunity to grow, to be able to prove himself, to show that he could be observant, that he could engage, that he could be thoughtful, that he could be responsive, and that when he tripped and fell, he could get back up again. And so he didn't give up on Adam, who became Dowd, and he would work with him again through the Noach experience. But the reason that God regretted creating humankind is because while individually we have potential, not often, but sometimes, collectively, we're always bad. Humans collectively are rotten. Study the history of civilization, every civilization. They go to war with their neighbors, they slave their neighbors. You have one person that acts as king. He's the only one with free will. Everybody else is subject to him. The clerics create religions to empower the king, and then the king grants privileges to the clerics of that religion, and they terrorize anyone who doesn't capitulate to them. And the caste economic system has existed throughout time, where there is no upward mobility for anyone. Humankind, we're tyrants collectively. And the same thing is true not only with civilizations, but with countries and with institutions and with all religions. Look at Islam. Within 100 years of the time it was created, they had eliminated a third of the Earth's population. Can you imagine that? And in 100 years of the time that a religion is created, the Earth loses 1/3 of its human souls. 200 million people dead. So God's not fond of collectivized man. When people support communism and Marxism, which is the collectivization of humankind, all it does is bring out the worst in us. More powerful a nation becomes, the worse it becomes. Look at what happened with Rome, and now look what happened to the United States. Collectivization is a very, very bad thing. And the reason that God gave up on humankind is he saw fallen man. The Nephalim means fallen man, outside of the garden, and what mankind did when they were given a neshama, the ability to think rationally. We became obnoxious, and that many of us together is awful. So God's not trying to save everyone. He would be delighted to. He was happy with the 8 souls aboard the ark. He was happy with just Adam in the garden. So you need to know the number of people that are going to benefit are going to be few. God quantifies it to some extent in the second statement that he etched in stone that says that the recipients of his mercy will be thousands. And thousands amongst billions is 1 in a million. And frankly, I don't think the odds are nearly that good. So I find Hosea to be among the most mentally stimulating, but also emotionally draining of the prophets. By far the most brilliant of the prophets is Yeshaya, Isaiah. When Dode is really on his game and inspired, Dode is brilliant as well. Moshe's summation of God's presentation of the Torah and Devarim is mentally acute too. So there are numbers, and you read Yoel, it's brilliantly written. You read Yirmiyah, also exceedingly intelligent. And some of the prophets are equal parts intellectual and emotional. When there are two emotional outbursts with Yeshaya. One where he is invited into heaven to witness it, his soul taken to heaven. And when he gets there, Yahweh opens the door to heaven so that Yeshaya has some understanding of the extent of the benefit of his message, how many people had paid attention of it, and therefore were being allowed into Shamayim, into heaven, as a result of his prophecies. And there was zero, not a single person. And Yeshaya broke down in tears over it. And, God said, hey, it's not your fault, but let me take you to the future. And that's when you see Yeshaya the other way around. He says, there's this other guy. You wrote a lot about Dode, but you're going to write and have written a lot about this other guy. And Yeshaya recognizes that the man from Edom is his Zeroah, and he's in that wine vat with him. And when he steps out with Yeshaya, based upon all that Yeshaya has done, Isaiah is claiming this is my guy, and we're going to save all that are going to be saved. We're going to work together to make that possible. And so you experience the joy in Yeshaya. Here in Hosea, he was asked to marry a temple prostitute so that he would have some empathy for what Yahweh was enduring with the religiosity of Israel. And this makes his message gripping. And there are statements like the ones I've just shared with you that you could expand upon for a lifetime. So sometimes it's like getting your prophecy from a fire hose gushing full blast. From the religious prostitutes to the infamous children, from Jezreel to the promised land, from divorce to reconciliation, it's all there. From the issues of the Balaam and a cadre of false gods to Yahweh, to people struggling with false shepherds, to the return of Dode. It's all permeates the pages and the words of Hosea. So Yisrael is being likened often in this book to a high-priced religious whore, one kicked out of a bordello and bereft of her clients, cast aside with not so much as a memorial stone for her to remember who she had once been. Her priests and her kings are all gone. The rabbis would replace the priests, while the dictators of other nations would rule over them instead of their kings. There would be no way to reach them or heal them for the longest time because of their religiosity, and it's almost impossible now. But this story doesn't conclude that way. God's people, at least a remnant of them, will return. Now, God plays a major role in causing that to happen. He primes the pump, so to say. This last 3.5 years with the two witnesses, Elia and myself, God is going to produce all manner of miracles around us. There's going to be this giant scroll that comes above our heads. It's going to play portions of the Yahweh vlog. It will show portions of the Yada Yahweh series of books. It's it's going to be miraculous in what it presents, and God is going to eliminate every religious artifact on the Temple Mount and restore it back to its proper state, and then erect a replica, or perhaps even the original tent of the restoring witness. Bring back the Ark of the Covenant, 10 statements of stone, or the original autograph of the Torah, and his two witnesses are going to be supernatural. If we don't like an argument that is being projected that is contrary to God's position and what we're trying to say on behalf of the children of Israel, our words will be able to vaporize the idiots, and we will understand every language and be able to speak every language. It will be an extraordinary situation. We'll have people from around the world try to kill us, and that will be of no avail. And some of this time, we'll be sharing the stage with Rahab, the Torahless one, the great betrayer of Israel, as Satan makes one last attempt to sway Jews to him and away from Yahweh. But anyway, as we come to this time, God's people will, through Yada Yahweh and through the testimony of the witnesses, through the Yahweh blog, they're going to learn what is needed to recognize Yahweh as their God. And then, as a result of the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, it's a rendered red heifer, but he ain't a girly cow. Adamah is a very important term to Yahweh. Adamah is comprised of three words, and the heart of it is dam. And dam is the Hebrew word for blood. And blood plays a very important role because there are two men who shed their blood for the benefit of the children of Israel. It's a purging influence on the soul, pursuant to ridding the soul of religious and political guilt. Doe did it on Pesach, I will do it on Teruah. You expand from dam, Daleth Mem, you add one letter, the Aleph. The Aleph was drawn as a ram's head and a bull's head. The horns and the yoke are for a bull. The pointy nose is that of a ram. It's a ram's and a bull's head. It is the ram who sacrificed his physical body on Pesach. It was Dode. And it is the bull, Yada, who will make his sacrifice as the bull on Teruah. The next, so you have with the ram and bull's head, in addition to dam, you have Adam, which means man. And the first man is Dode, this ram. And as Adamah, which adds the hey, which is a man standing up, reaching up, pointing up to God, saying, be observant, then that becomes me. So blood is in the center of it. If you expand out one letter, you get Adam, who was Dode. You add another letter, the hey at the end, and you get me, the man reaching up, pointing up, telling you to pay attention to what God has to say. That is the Adamah. And the Parah adds the same hey to the end of Par Bull. Par Bull is Pei, which is the mouth. He's going to be a very vocal individual. The Rosh is the R, and that is an observant, thoughtful man, a man that observes and listens and then speaks. After pondering the implications of those words, was drawn as a head in that way. And the H, ha, at the end makes that bull that is sacrificed a man, the same man that you see in Adamah, standing at the end of that name. That's God's plan. That's what he is going to do on Teruah on behalf of this mortal remnant of Yisrael who arrives in the last days so that they're purged of their religious guilt, cleansed and prepared for what we've just read. Yahweh's return as God with Dod as king. This is the story. It's consistent all the way through. So recognizing that this was all written some 3 centuries after Dod's initial passing, the realization that the surviving Israelites will acknowledge Dod as their king upon their return is exhilarating. He came back. The realization that God can take a soul and put that soul back in the timeline is made absolutely certain, not just with Chanuk, who becomes one of the 2 witnesses, but also with Elia. After impressing God with his oratory over the sacrifice of the bull to rid Israel of religion and politics, a role that he's going to reprise when he returns as one of the 2 final witnesses, which is why he was taken. We already know through Malachi that Elia is one of the 2. So God taking his soul and putting it in another body to serve as one of the 2 final witnesses, because he's already practiced at this sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. And the sacrifice on Teruah is going to be the same as it was then, except this time it's going to be on the Temple Mount. And this time, rather than carrying buckets of water, Yahweh's going to release copious amount of water from inside of the Temple Mount. And this time again, God's going to ignite the fire. And this time again, Eliah is going to be the master of ceremonies, and it's going to be a hoot. He's a funny man. So this is what you have to look forward to. There's always a harbinger of things to come. And there was in this account. So we're doing this so that Dod can return as king. What good is it to be king and to have a kingdom if there's no one in it? And this is the only way that it's going to be populated. And heretofore, Jews have been impossible. I mean, they revolted against Dod. They revolted against Moshe. They revolted against Yahweh. And so Jews are impossible. And the only way this is going to work is for the Jews who become that final remnant. They have to be purged of their politics and their religion. And that's the purpose of the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, so that they are decent subjects for Dod. And we're all going to acknowledge Dod is our king. It's going to be exhilarating. And yet, it is another affirmation of the final arrival and establishment of the kingdom. And this leaves Maimonides looking like a nincompoop for not recognizing it will occur. It's throughout the prophets. It's obvious. And yet, Rabbinic Judaism is based upon the testimony of the Muslim Maimonides, who got this timeline wrong and doesn't know who the Messiah is and is clueless. And it was all there. In 721 BCE, shortly after these words were addressed to the children of Israel, the Assyrian army captured the Israelite capital at Samaria, slaughtered a bunch of Yehudim, Israelites. They degraded everyone. They were savages. They not only enslaved most, they marched them naked with metal rings that were punched through their noses as they walked them into captivity. Yehuda would survive that onslaught because Hezekiah rid the tiny remaining kingdom of all religious idols, and then returned to Yah by observing Pesach matzah and bakurim in accordance with the Torah. And so when the Assyrians returned with 185,000 of the world's most capable warriors, some 40 times what Israel experienced during Alaska flood on October 7th of 23. 185,000. And Yahweh didn't fail. He didn't need an IDF. One Malak was all it took. And they were gone. And we have independent affirmation of this. The power of the Torah. Power of returning to Yahweh. Of course, it lasted 2 weeks, and they were back to their old ways because Jews prefer religion to a relationship, and that has to end for the return to take place. The temple sacrifices that were associated with the Mikre all haven't been performed in Yehuda since 70 CE, when the Romans destroyed it. And fortunately, the ultimate sacrifice was made by Dode in 33 CE, fulfilling Passover, unyeasted bread, and first fruits. And although Dode provided us with an eyewitness account, most Israelites have rejected his commitment to save them. If Israelites, even Goyim for that matter, want to know why so many have died, estranged from Yahweh, and as a result have been kept out of heaven, the truth is being laid out before our eyes. God's instructions are straightforward, and they are consistent and unambiguous. So after telling us that a final remnant of Yisrael is going to return, and that they're going to return to Yahweh as their God and Dode as their king, and they're going to have enormous respect as a result of this, we're told that the best advice God can give to us is to listen to the word of Yahweh, to Shama Debar Yahweh. Boy, what a powerful 3 words. Shama, written in the call imperative, literal interpretation as an expression of volition in the second person. So you should choose to listen. Shama. To the word, the Debar, the statements and the communications of Yahweh. Not to the Lord, not to Hashem, not to the rabbis, not to Jesus, not to Allah, not to a church. You should choose of your own volition to listen to the word of Yahweh. Not to pray, not to speak, not to worship, not to bow down, not to be religious. You should choose to listen to the word of Yahweh. Now, how would you do that? Exactly what we're doing now. Accurately render God's testimony and read it. Even when I am writing these books and composing these translations, I read it out loud. I want to hear the sound. I want to feel the cadence of the words. I want it to go from my brain, through my mouth, and through my ears, to process it again in my brain. And in the process of doing that, you come to have a much deeper appreciation for what God is communicating. So choose to listen. Now, God will also say, choose to be observant, closely examining, carefully considering. That is the related shamar. This is Shama. And Shama is tragically changed to obey in English Bibles. It does not mean obey. It means to listen, to hear. And when it's written in the imperative, God, under the auspices of free will, is saying, my best advice I can give you is of your own volition, not because somebody tells you to, because you want to. Listen to the word, to the statements, the communications, the speech, the promises of Yahweh. Children of Yisrael. They say, well, I'm not a child of Yisrael, so I don't need to do that. You're right. You don't. You are never going to meet Yahweh if you make that choice. You will never enter heaven if you make that choice. So you're right. You don't have to make it. Free will and all. And you can see children of Yisrael as the descendants of Jacob. Or you can see Yisrael for what the compound of three words mean. Ish, individuals. Sarah, to engage and endure. To be empowered by. To benefit from. El, God. So if you fashion yourself as a child of God who engages and endures with him, well, then you might want to check out the covenant. And then you may want to choose of your own volition to listen to the word of Yahweh. Because indeed, Yahweh, he has a dispute against the inhabitants of the land. He is differentiating now between the children of Israel, those who engage and endure with God, and those living in Israel. I would too. You have 25% of Israelites Israeli citizens today who are Marxists, want nothing to do with God. They are collectivized man, which is the worst of man. You have 20 to 25% of Israelis today are ultra-Orthodox, some 20% Haredim, and they're the walking plague. They are the Black Death. They're far worse than parasites. And in between those two 20 to 25% groups, so you have about half of Israelis today who are right-wing political belligerents who think that the destruction of Gaza was a good idea, who think that the obliteration of Lebanon is appropriate, who think that their second war against Iran was a good idea, who think that they should be leagued with America in fighting wars, who think that as settlers they have every right to abuse the Muslims. No. Destroying Gaza isolated Israel and caused Jews to be demonized across the world. There is no exit strategy in the Iranian war. Devastating for the United States and for Israel. And it was obviously so before the war began again. And Netanyahu is disastrous for Israel. Israel has become the world's pariah. Anti-Semitism is largely because of what Jews have done that has been so counterproductive. And you might say, what right do I have to speak against Jews when my job is to call Israel home? Because you need to know, from God's point of view, you've been rotten. Guess what God says? I got a dispute against you. I'm contentious. I have a grievance. I want to make an accusation, an argument against the inhabitants of the land. I'm telling you why God is so frustrated with them. He is opposed to religion. He's opposed to politics. And you got 99% of Jews who are either overtly religious or overtly political. That's God's argument. You erased his name. That's his argument. You've denounced his son. I mean, you've now associated a pagan symbol under which you had genocide perpetrated against you, and that hideous star had nothing to do with Dote. It had all to do with the Nazis and the Roman Catholics. That was the star of oppression. And you wear that as a religious symbol and a political symbol. Yeah, God's got a grievance with you. You won't say his name. You won't acknowledge that Dote is your returning Messiah and King. You don't even know what year it is on the timeline. You don't know that you're about to enter the time of Jacob's troubles and you're ill-prepared for it. Yeah, God's got a quarrel with you. He wanted you to be part of the covenant and you broke the terms and conditions. When God tried to speak to you directly, you told him to shut up and go away. You never wanted to hear from him or see him again. You replaced his Torah with the Talmud. You created the religions of Christianity and Islam. You made your own enemies. The next line is, it's verifiable and true. That there is no honesty. There's no integrity. There's no loyalty, trustworthiness, dependability, no consistency, no sense of reality. There's no enduring love or devotion. There's no longing for the relationship. And there is no knowledge, no discernment or understanding of God in the land. Hosea, he liberates and saves 4:1. I want to linger there. I want to return to these two statements on our next program here from the Ocean Studio. I want you to know that as Yahweh is calling a remnant back, he is telling you that that remnant will be minuscule. Because the fact of the matter is that you're not listening to Yahweh. The only hope for you was to choose to listen to the word of Yahweh, to become the children of Israel. Because indeed, God wants you to know that if you continue on as you are, that God has a dispute with you. He's contentious towards Israel. Of the three so-called Abrahamic religions, from God's point of view, the worst of the three is Judaism, because Judaism was the mother of Christianity and of Islam. So God's got a dispute against you. Those of you who are living in Israel, God's got a problem. He's saying that it is verifiable and true, that there is absolutely no honesty, integrity, or reliability. No trustworthiness, no dependability, no consistency, no stability, no sense of reality among Israelis. I used to communicate to Israelis all the time on X and Facebook. And finally, I just gave up. Best I can do is write, do this blog, make the information freely available. And what God has said, it's not until Israel suffers the gross carnage of their own doing, of their own making in this time of Israel's troubles, that they've recognized that the IDF wasn't such a good idea. It didn't work. Counterproductive. Really, politics are even more counterproductive. And the worst of all is Judaism. And when they're finally to the point where they realize that, well, that's the big three from Israel's point of view. You can add 4 in Israeli traditions and culture. But when all of those fail, and there's 4 million invaders screaming Allahu Akbar, then God's going to be the last hope. And a remnant's going to turn to Yada Yahweh, yadayah.com. A remnant's going to listen to what the two witnesses have to say. And some will relent. But right now, quite honestly, there's no integrity, no sense of loyalty. There's no devotion for the relationship. There's no knowledge, no discernment, no understanding. Complete ignorance of God in the land of Israel. And that would be true whether you're talking about Jews as Hasidics, Jews as Marxists, Arabs as Muslims, or European as Christians. I don't think there's 10 people. 10. I don't even think there's 10 Israelis that know God. Not even 10. So with that thought, I'm going to conclude this program from the Ocean Studio. To know Yahweh, to know Dode, you need to face the truth. And the truth is really, really, really ugly. It is also beautiful. Yahweh is beautiful. The opportunity he's offering us is spectacular. We have happily ever after, just a matter of 7 years away. I've shared on these programs all that God's going to do to make that possible, but you need to know that it's going to be impossible for the overwhelming preponderance of you, because you're pretending to be smart and you're just really stupid when it comes to God. All of you who are religious are antagonizing God. All of you who pray to him, who worship him, who bow down to him, and who read texts other than the Torah and prophets, like the Talmud, the New Testament, or the Quran, all you're doing is antagonizing him. And you are ignorant of him. That isn't my opinion. It's God's conclusion. It is a matter of fact. And until that changes, you're not returning. That's why we have 7 years left. I hope you listen. Thanks so much.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yao on our next podcast.